Shaktipat Seer 2.
Kyabje Pabongka Rinpoche, a peerless king of the Dharma, spoke a little in order to set our motivations properly for the teaching to follow. He said, "So be it. The great Tsongkhapa, the Dharma king of the three realms, has said, this opportune physical form is worth more than a wish-granting gem. You only gain its like the once. So hard to get, so easily destroyed. It's like a lightning bolt in the sky." So he's talking about the physical form being like a lightning bolt in the sky, being like, not even the physical form, but just this human life in general, being like a lightning bolt in the sky. I should have brushed my hair a little bit, huh? Just got out of the shower. Anyway, he talks about this opportune human life as being more valuable than a wish-fulfilling gem, and more short than a burst of lightning. In all our births from beginningless time until present, there has not been any form of suffering that we have not undergone here in samsara, nor any form of happiness we have not experienced. But no matter how many bodies we have had, we have obtained nothing worthwhile from them. Now that we have gained this optimum human form, we should do something to derive some essence from it. So long as we do not examine this life, we will feel no joy whatsoever in finding such a supreme rebirth, and would be happier in finding some pennies. We will not feel sorry at all if we waste this human opportune rebirth, or this optimum human rebirth. We would probably feel much regret, though, if we lost some sum of money. But this physical form we have now is 100,000 times more valuable than any wish-fulfilling jewel. So he says that this human life is more valuable than any wish-fulfilling jewel. If you had a jewel that was magic and could grant wishes, this would be less valuable than your human form of life. Because the human form of life is a wish-fulfilling jewel. But the wish that it fulfills is more valuable than any kind of materialistic wish. And that is the wish of attaining nirvana. That is the wish of attaining immortality. Of existing free of suffering in the pure land of absolute bliss, where the trees are made of multicolored gemstones, the pathways made of multicolored gemstones, the ponds are filled with the 7 types of sweet water, 8 types, whatever it was, and multicolored lotus flowers that issue forth a serene light of various colors. Devotees are born from these lotus flowers into the pure land of absolute eternal bliss. As a breeze flows through, harmonious pentatonic scales are played through the crystals in the trees, blowing forth sounds of dharma such as emptiness, bliss, meditation, service, things like this. In that realm, the life force is so potent and so filled that each experience is like utter ecstasy. Almost like being inebriated. It's almost like the experience of taking some drug or something, which makes you high off your mind, but this drug is nothing inebriating, but it's a superconscious drug, Amrita, a superconscious nectar. What is more valuable than what I've just described? Nothing. Not all the gems in the world. Not if you filled the whole universe with gemstones would you find more value than to be eternal, in the realm of eternal life, nothing is more valuable than that. I think it's easy to get caught up in this externalized, mundane existence and forget who we are, forget where we're going, forget where we have came from. But as this book goes on to say, we've experienced all various sufferings. We have drank more molten hot brass, liquid brass in hell than to fill up hundreds of oceans of water. Then that would fill up that much oceans of water. We have, ate so much dirt as worms that it would fill up football stadiums. We have gone through so much suffering as hungry ghosts, as asuras, as devas. Throughout the realms of samsaric existence, the forms of suffering which we have undergone are limitless. That's where we've come from. And when we enter into this world, we forget all about it. Go about our days, start chasing some money, or chasing some girl, or chasing some, fleeting object of the senses. And we become ensnared again and controlled again by the material side of things. We like to think that we're in control. This is my life. I have my car, this and da. Actually not. Everything is under the command of demigods. Everything you have in your life was allotted to you by the forces of the gods. Everything that anybody has in their life was allotted to them by gods, whether it's positive or negative. So you have nothing in this life except your karma, which is given to you, which is provided for you. So simply enjoy the results of your past karma, says certain Buddhist teachings. But either way, we had the reason for coming to satsang like this, and the reason for meditating, the reason for doing all this, is so that we don't forget. We don't forget where we've come from. We don't forget where we are and who we are. We don't forget where we're going. And in this remembrance, also called in Vedic, in Sanskrit, Shmaranam, which is the first and the principal duty of the Vaishnava, is to remember. And also in Pure Land Buddhism, the first and principal duty of the Pure Land Buddhist, I forgot the name that they used for myoho. They call them like myohos or something, like, which means like someone who's dedicated to causality, as in the name of the Lotus Sutra, which is derived, or from which is derived the main mantra, the Nichiren Buddhist sect, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. That's right, it was a Myohonin. That's what they call the Pure Lands. The first duty of a Myohonin is deep hearing. Deep hearing, he says. Not just normal hearing like, hello, can you get me a cup of water or something like that. But deep hearing. Like, I don't know, like when you're in a movie theater or something and your senses are completely absorbed in the movie, you're hearing deeply. Or when you're paying full attention to your father or something like that, that's hearing deeply. Instead of just lightly hearing. We should pay full attention to the teachings, whether it be in verbal form as I'm presenting now, or written form, or some video or something like that. We should pay full attention and hear 100%, and not just hear with these physical ears, but listen with the internal senses of the heart. Scholars and intellectual philosophers, they hear with their ears. They don't hear with their heart. Only masters hear with their heart. Master is not necessarily a scholar, although most likely masters have some scholarship. But a scholar is definitely not necessarily a master, although a master is most likely a scholar. So, we're not just dry philosophers. And we shouldn't try to be just dry philosophers. I'm not accusing any of you of being dry philosophers, but I'm just saying, and also for future reference, for anybody who might be listening to this audio in the future, which I'm recording, the first step is to listen deeply with your heart. And in this way, we begin to penetrate beyond just the five senses. As I was about to say, an intellectualist, a philosopher, or a scholar, these kind of people, although that's nothing wrong with being like that. And there's, of course, various types of scholars and philosophers, but generally, the type of people, especially nowadays, like in the New Age, like you see a lot of people who are very philosophically minded, but their spirituality is more of an emotional pretense, if that makes sense. It's almost like an emotional spirituality. It's really strange. And it's very astral, on the astral level, full of feeling and pride, and not even the divine pride, but just kind of an egoic thing. Either way, someone on this level, when they hear the truth, when they hear the scriptures, and they hear some philosophy or something, they integrate into a logical framework and they relate it to other previous logical framework. So a lot of these people are carrying with them, without realizing it, a ton of baggage from the sensory realm. But a master, when he hears the philosopher, or the wisdom, or some logic, or some truth, or some dharma, hears with his heart, hears with his whole soul, his or her, sorry ladies, hears with their whole soul. And so, like I said, whether it be smarnam or deep hearing, this is the first step that's given by a lot of the bhakti traditions. Hearing with your whole soul. Because then you begin to develop a sort of intuition, which is not separate from superconsciousness. There is a deep force within yourself, which is omniscient. Not to say that you are omniscient, because that's a non sequitur, because the you doesn't even exist in that relativistic sense. But rather, there's a piece of omniscience within you. A piece of the absolute reality within you. Bodhicitta. Heart mind. Bodhicitta. Awake heart mind. Everyone has this within them. This bodhicitta, this enlightened quality. But it doesn't come from a logical put it all together and make it into this kind of relative thing which I compare to my previous understanding of the world as a physical form and this and that. Only when the words are heard with the heart does it penetrate beyond just a mental exercise. And one can begin to exercise their internal spiritual senses. And this is what it's all about. If you read this whole damn book, you'll have gotten nowhere if you didn't hear it with your spiritual senses. If you didn't take the time as you're reading to ponder, meditate, allow it to sink in beyond just the lower concrete mind into the deeper intuitive wisdom, which is called buddhi. That type of our mind which is concrete relative to the senses and what it knows from the external surroundings, this is called manas. That's the lower mind. There's also a higher form of mind situated on the Indu chakra here, which is called buddhi. And this is super consciousness. Srila Prabhupada called his teachings buddhi yoga, the yoga of the spiritual intellect. So, if we don't develop our buddhi, if we don't, and you notice how buddhi is very much close to the word bodhicitta. Buddhi, bodhi, very closely related. Bodhi means awake or enlightenment. Bodhi means awakened mind or enlightened mind. Buddhi is a spiritual, intuitive function. You see, the place where it's located on the body, here, above the eyes, implies its spiritual nature. So there's a big difference. And just being able to hear on that level of buddhi, to develop bodhicitta, that's enough. That's enough to transcend suffering. That's all it is. And if one can't develop that, then constantly they will be drawn along that path of chasing after sensory objects for sensory gratification. Like he was saying here, you would feel much regret if you lost some money, but you would not feel sorry at all if we waste this optimum human rebirth. And that's because we're seeing with our concrete mind and not with the buddhi, not with our spiritual intellect or our intuition. And it's also interesting to note that it's right here where the neocortex part of the brain is. It's not right brain, it's not left brain, but it's right smack in the center as the third part of the brain. So what do we have between the left and the right? Between feminine and masculine? There is a integrated wisdom which is both logical from the left side and intuitive from the right side. It's buddhi, bodhicitta, awakened heart mind. You know, bodhicitta is called heart mind. Just like on the right side is kind of like a more heart-based understanding, intuitive, artsy, feely, creative. And the left side is a more logical understanding. Solid, concrete equations, numbers, rational, figuring things out. So, united with them, united between them on the Indu chakra or the Buddhi chakra is a neutral state of mind, which harmonizes left and right brain in itself perfectly, which harmonizes opposites within itself perfectly. This is the complete totality, you see. The totality is neither left nor right, but a totality. So, only with the heart Can you hear totality? Think totality. Be totality. And when I say that heart, I'm also including the crown, because the drop of bodhicitta, according to the Vajrayanists, drips from the 1,000-petaled lotus internally, inside of the throat. A white drop falls down into the heart, and this is the drop of bodhicitta. Also, a red drop is seen to rise from the belly, and this unites with the red drop, or the white drop, excuse me, and it produces an indestructible drop in the center. But that's for another day. That's some tantric thing. I'm just saying that the heart and the buddhi are connected in a special way, and also the mind and the two hemispheres of the brain. We should learn through deep hearing, begin to distinguish between which part of the brain I'm working in. Am I working in my logical, sensory, relative side of my brain, or am I working in the absolute big picture, wholeness side of the brain? Or am I working in such a way that it combines them all into a synthetic, perfect, left-right, simultaneous type of brain? So, when we're hearing spiritual knowledge, we shouldn't just be focusing on the technical side of it, nor just the fluffy kind of, big picture side of it, but we should find the harmony within by focusing and hearing at a deeper level, the level of that omniscient Buddha within the heart. And only then is it possible to really come to terms with this life. Until then, we're pretty much just human animals, not able to see what the humans are doing. In other words, the real divine beings, the actual existing things. Compared to them, we exist just about as much as we consider a blade of grass existing. We don't even, or a fly existing. A fly buzzes around for a day and then it dies. To them, that's how we are. To those real divine beings existed in the Vaikuntha, in the Buddha realm, in the heaven, in the Jannah. To those beings, we're nothing more than a fly buzzing, dying. Our life is so utterly, utterly important and so utterly, utterly valuable. It should make you cringe when you see people wasting it on mundane shit that matters not a single iota. You see? So there's two kinds of consciousness. There is ahamkara consciousness, which is like a lotus folded and budded, focused on itself, restricted, cut off from everything else. Or there is buddhi, which is a blossomed lotus, full, a piece of the divine scenery of suchness, unique and yet the same. Which has an affinity with its internal senses in such a way that it is seeing from the inside out. Whereas the ahamkara consciousness, the closed bud-like consciousness, sees from the out in. It's a complete difference. Seeing from in out to seeing from out in. Complete and utter difference. And these are the two polarities that exists on this earth. Out in and out. Which is why that the Buddha taught emptiness, no self, this kind of thing. He was teaching to the out-in people who could only see the external. So he said, since you are so geared towards seeing the external, I have to tell you that there is no self whatsoever. Because then that kind of pulls the rug from out underneath the ahamkara. And it says, what? There's no self? But I'm focusing so much on myself. There can't be a no self. No, that can't be right. It's me. I am this, my this, and mine, and I am this way. From the very beginning of my practice to right now, I can tell you that the driving force, which has been the foundation upon which my small, awakening transformation has turned upon, has been my perception of self. Instead of seeing self as an external thing with a body, as this name that I was born with, as my likes or dislikes or my emotional states or my temperaments or my memories, instead of identifying with these things, which are called ahamkara, false ego, I began to identify with not that. I began to identify with a vague sort of mystic consciousness, a Brahman. Identify with an Atman. Instead of with just this separated, suffering, temporary thing which appears to my senses. So, those people whose senses are spiritualized, they can see their soul. They can see their light body. They can see the spiritual world. They can see Mount Meru. They can see Vaikunta. They can see Shukavati, the pure land of Amitabha. They can see these things because they are a part of these things in the most real way. They might look like they're here on this earth to the people who are looking outside in, whose senses are externalized. They might look like they're on this earth to those people, but in actuality they are within the Buddha land. They are in the pure land, and everything around them is a pure land. And they perceive that way. They are liberated while in the flesh, Jivan Mukti. They exist in heaven while walking on the earth. They have already accomplished immortality of the soul in a conscious, super conscious way, not just in a way which produces death and rebirth, in that kind of immortality, which isn't immortality at all, which is mortality. The immortality of the light body, maybe I should say, the Shambhogakaya, the illusory body, as it's called. Those people are not at all caught up into the samsaric worlds of the 6 desire realms of hell, ghost, animal, human, asura, deva. Hell, ghost, animal, human, asura, deva. 6 desire realms. 7th, Buddha. Whereas the person whose senses are outside in, they might not think that they have any kind of bearing to those 6 desire worlds, but inside of them they have the heart of a demon. They have the hankering of a hungry ghost. They have the habits of an animal. They have the jealousy of an asura. They have the pride of a deva and the vanity of a deva. And they have all the ignorance of humans. So actually those people who look like they're not related to any other dimension, they are. But those dimensions to which they're related are the beginningless karma of hell, ghosts, animals, etc. Whereas on the other side, the enlightened master, he sees only the Buddha land, only Mount Meru, only heaven. So all of that is accomplished merely by stopping the association with your perceived sense of self. That sense of self you have created, which has molded and morphed and has never stayed the same for too long, and which will be uncreated one day. As Jesus said, in order to pass into heaven, one must pass through the eye of the needle. He said it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than a rich man to enter heaven. Likewise, a person who is holding on to their ego cannot fit through the tininess of the needle. The only thing that can fit through this is the pure awareness that you are. The pure awareness which resides within you. That part of you which is Dharma Dhatu or Buddha Dhatu, which is awake nature, which has all of the qualities of the whole universe. That side of you is there. But the ahamkara is so externalized, so caught up in what everyone else is saying, so caught up in its endless, beginningless negative karma, that universal clarity and universal power within you that is reflective of God is covered, like clouds obscuring the sunlight is the metaphor often used. The only thing which is obscuring it is coverings. That's the only thing in the way. There's coverings, skandhas, aggregates, coverings, clouds of karma. That's why we make offerings to the forms of God, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. We make offerings in the form of our service to others. Why? That we study and try to hear with the heart and listen. Why? That we control our reflexive, anger and fear and lust, all of these negative, dirty actions, feelings, emotions, thoughts, why we control all these things. Why that we do practice, why that we do all these things. It's in order to purify our karma. So, when we get to a point where we have equilibrated, where we have evened out the negative karma that we've brought with us into this life, then we can begin to connect with some of those enlightened qualities which are within every single one of us, but which are covered and obscured in so many ways. So, if you're given an opportunity to be compassionate to another, if you're given an opportunity to be uncompassionate, if you're given an opportunity to be angry, if you're given an opportunity to open the door for a little old lady, if you're given the opportunity to go to a temple and make some offerings, if you're given an opportunity to make a donation to some gurus or some movement or some religious thing, if you're given any kind of these opportunities, and everything in your life is an opportunity allotted to you by the gods. Everything in life is a conscious experience. Nothing is happening unconsciously. When you're given these opportunities, my friends, recognize them as a chance to purify your karma. And don't give in to the first instinctive reaction based from your ego, which is in the belly, in the lower regions. It's where all that fear and anger and anxiety comes from when you feel it. When you get in an argument with somebody, or you know that you said something stupid, or you know you said something mean or bad. I don't know about you, but I always feel it in my gut when I feel something like that. The element of thunder, the chin, thunder, quaking. This is an opportunity to get more karma or to purify karma, just as everything is. There is not a single awareness in the whole sea of awareness which is not a part of that enlightened autocratic reality. What do I mean by autocratic? I mean it rules as an... When I hear autocratic, I almost think of like automobile or something like a machine, you know. It rules like a force, a dynamic force of law, of perfect law. And that is why in Buddhism this force is called Dharmakaya, body of law, or body of truth. I like law better. Body of cosmic law. The body of cosmic law is everywhere, interpenetrating every single point of reality. It is aware of every single point of reality. It is the reality. It is every single point of reality, including within yourself. Dharmakaya is within you. That's why every single person has a sense of right and wrong. We call it our conscience. That's Dharmakaya. The part of our soul which is the deepest part. Recognize in your life every single opportunity to purify your karma and to help others. Not just to purify your own karma, but helping others does purify your karma. And that's what Mahayana is all about. Mahayana Buddhism. About putting others before yourself. So let me read a little bit more from this book and then we'll do some chanting of the song which I wrote yesterday. If you were to clean a wish-granting jewel by washing it 3 times, polishing it 3 times, and then offer it at the top of the victory banner, you would effortlessly obtain the good things of this life, food, clothes, and the like. You may attain 100, 1,000, 10,000, even 100,000 such gems, but they cannot do for you even the smallest thing that you can achieve by means of this rebirth. For they cannot be used to prevent you from taking your next rebirth in the lower realms. So just like I was saying, the reason that this jewel is so infinitely valuable, more worth than anything, because no material wealth can buy you what you can get simply by making proper use of this life. How much of a gift is that? This is the treasury that the Father Tathagata gives to his Son. Like that story we read the other day from the Lotus Sutra, chapter 4, about how that the Tathagata had this son, and the son ran away from home early on, and it's like the story of the prodigal son returning. But the son returns and he sees the Tathagata's wealth and he thinks, oh, this frightening person, I surely have to run away before they enslave me. Before they enslave me and put me to work on this manor. He had all the Tathagata was rich, had all these servants, etc. So it was very intimidating to the young man, because he is looking at it in a dualistic way. But at the end of the story, he gradually comes to accept and understand that the Tathagata was his father, and that the wealth and the tremendous value was his gift. In that same way, just by being born into this world, you have been given an invaluable gift. But how many people recognize this? How many people recognize it in the way which we have talked about today? Think for a second. All those people on Facebook endlessly writing and writing and writing. I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm going to the store, I'm posting pictures of my this, and posting like ants in an ant hive, scurrying about, busying themselves with this or that thing, and then dying. With your present physical form, you can prevent yourself from ever going to the lower realms again. You can prevent yourself from ever having to suffer again. You can prevent yourself from ever having to be reborn in a terrible, terrible condition. Rebirth is no fun. It's funny. Western theologians argue that the doctrine of reincarnation somehow limits the depth or the meaning of Christ's salvation of the people. Christ dying for the sins of the people, which, by the way, is an entirely Eastern concept and not foreign to dharmic religions. The idea of the guru saving and offering himself, sacrificing himself for the sins of the others, for his disciples, that's an absolutely Eastern concept. He probably picked that up in the East, maybe. I don't know. Maybe he's just omniscient, and that's probably more like it. But either way, relative and omniscient at the same time, I don't know. The Western theologians argue that somehow the doctrine of reincarnation makes Christ's redeeming of man less efficacious or less meaningful. That's because these people have no clue that reincarnation is actually a terrible, god-awful process. And shit, you can reincarnate in some nasty hell place, which is dark and grungy and molten lava everywhere and all the nastiness you could imagine. You could reincarnate as a hungry ghost, which is even, just as bad. You can reincarnate as an animal for thousands and thousands of kalpas, stuck as an animal. Do you want that? Moreover, if you want to achieve the physical rebirth of a Brahma, an Indra, and so forth, you can achieve it through your present one. If you want to go to pure realms, such as Abhirati, Shukavati, or Tushita, you can do so by means of this present physical rebirth. And actually, that's what I recommend 100%, that you strive to be reborn in Shukavati. Shukavati is the pure land of eternal bliss and life, ruled by Amitayus, the Buddha of infinite life ocean. So the life there is infinite. You can work on your practice in utter bliss. If you feel that this life is too distracting to attain liberation, then by all means you should make a vow to be reborn in Chukravati. And this is not all, for you can achieve the states of liberation or omniscience through this present rebirth, unless you don't practice. Most important of all, through this physical rebirth, you're able to achieve the state of Vajradhara, the unification of the illusory body and great bliss, within one short lifetime in this degenerate age. Otherwise it would take 3 countless aeons to achieve. Thus, this rebirth is worth more than 100,000 billion precious jewels. If you meaninglessly squander this rebirth that you have managed to obtain, it would be even greater of a pity than if you had wasted 100,000 billion precious jewels. There is no greater loss. Nothing could be blinder. No self-deception could be greater. Protector Shantideva has said, no self-deception could be worse, after gaining such a chance, than cultivating non-virtue. Nothing could be blinder. So, my friends, unfortunately, we have an entire planet of people who are cultivating non-virtue above anything else. So that goes to show you how much you must recoil your physical senses into your heart by means of, really, the real method is to bring the pranas, the winds of the body, into the kundalini, into the central channel, and that absorbs the chakras, which represent the sense tattvas, the individual tanmatras and mahabhutas of the senses. Basically, the things which produce your externalized senses are within the pranic wheels of the chakra. So, by bringing the breath energy, the prana, by uniting the winds into the central channel of the Sushumna, you are absorbing the senses into bodhicitta. This is the Tantrayana process. And this is the most complete process, the highest process for attaining what we're talking about. You must try to therefore extract the essence from it now. If you don't, you are sure to die anyway, and you cannot know when this will happen. So he says you must try to extract the essence from it now. And that's exactly what I was talking about earlier when I was talking about the difference between external senses and hearing on a logical base versus internal senses hearing with the buddhi, with the heart. That's the only way to extract the essence of this existence. We are now attending this Dharma teachings, but none of us will be left in 100 years' time. In the past, Buddha, our teacher, amassed the 2 collections of merit and primal wisdom over many aeons, thus obtaining the Vajrapati. Yet even he, through the common appearance, went to nirvana, beyond suffering. After him there came scholars, adepts, etc. They have seemingly all departed this life. Nothing is left but their names to say, there was this one and some other. In short, there is no one you can produce as an example of a person whose death has been spared. How could you alone live forever? You have no hope of being spared. Therefore, not only are you sure to die, but you can also be certain when this will happen. But you cannot be certain when this will happen, You cannot even be sure that you will be still alive in next year in this human realm, still wearing your 3 types of monk's robes, but this time next year you may have already been reborn as an animal covered in shaggy fur with horns on your head, or a hungry ghost, for example, having to live without being able to find even a drop of water or a bit of food. Or you may have been reborn in the hells, experiencing the miseries of heat and cold, being roasted or on fire. Your mental continuum does not cease after your death, and must take rebirth. There are only 2 migrations for rebirth, the upper and the lower. If you are born in the hell without respite, the Vichi hell, you will have to stay there with your body indistinguishable from the hell fire. In the milder hells, such as the hell of continual resurrection, you are killed and then revived hundreds of times each day. And this is called a minor hell. You continually suffer torments. How could we endure this if we cannot even bear to put our hand in a fire now? And we will suffer in those hells the same way that we might suffer from such heat in our present bodies. We might wonder, maybe the experience suffering is different and easier, but this is wrong. If reborn as a hungry ghost, you will not be able to find so much as a drop of water for years. If you find it hard to observe fasting now, how could you endure such a rebirth? As for animal rebirths, take the case of being a dog. Examine what sort of places where they live. The way they have to go in search of food and sort of food they eventually find. Do you think you could possibly bear living that sort of life? You may feel the lower realms are far away, but between you and the lower realms is only that you can still draw breath. As long as we remain uncritical, we never suspect that we are going to the lower realms. See, that's another thing. People get on me a lot for being so critical. But I just take this shit seriously. I don't, necessarily appreciate when a bunch of fake teachers go around spewing a bunch of nonsense. Because not only are they creating a shit ton of negative karma for themselves, not only are they going to go straight to hell after this life, but they're dragging down people with them. It's a very serious situation. It's not a joking matter. It's not be nice and they're on their own path and just let them do their own thing. Fuck all that shit. I don't want to end up in some place like this. I don't want anybody to end up in some place like this. And therefore, the true Dharma must be established. As long as we remain uncritical, we never suspect that we are going to the lower realms. We probably think that we will more or less keep our vows, perform most of our daily recitations, and have not committed any serious sins such as killing a person and running off with his horse. The trouble is that we have not looked into things properly. So that's again what I was talking about earlier. The whole problem with this is the people see with a relative mind based on what their senses have gathered, what they've learned from other people in this material world, what their ego has told them. It's the most hidden and deadly poison that we have within us. We have not looked over things properly. We should think it over in detail. Then we would see that we are not free to choose whether we go to the lower realms or not. This is determined by our karma. We have a mixture of virtuous and non-virtuous karma in our mental streams. The stronger of these two will be triggered by craving and clinging when we die. So this is very serious. If you cultivate negative karma throughout your whole life, like most people are doing, when you die, my friends, it is not a pretty scene. It is not pretty. You die completely alone. Nobody can come with you. Not me, not your parents, not your children, not your friends. Nobody can come with you when you die. It is you and God. It is you and Satan. It is you and your karma. It is you and the fear, worry, anxiety that you've amassed in this life. And that's not a pretty thing. It says in the Bhagavad Gita, whatever state that you're in when you die, that state you will attain after death without fail. You can be sure. Whatever state you're in when you die, that state you will attain after death, period. So, unfortunately and tragically, the majority of people in this world seem to be headed to a course where when they die, they will reincarnate in a lower place, and they will die in a terrible, horrific manner. So in this way, you should think about existence, and it will help you cultivate compassion naturally. Do you see how compassion is natural in the awakened mind? It will cultivate naturally compassion for others, and that's what it's all about. If you can save one person from this fate, the amount of good karma that you will accrue will dissolve almost everything. If you can just save one person from this fate. The stronger of these two, virtuous and non-virtuous karma in our mental streams, will be triggered by craving and clinging when we die. We will look into which of these two things is the stronger in our mental streams. We will see that it is non-virtue, and the degree of strength is determined by the force of the motive, the deed, and the final step. Thus, although we might think that we have only done small non-virtues, their force is enormous. So I'll read a little bit more and then we'll finish. Let us take for an example, suppose you say one scornful word to your pupils. For instance, you are motivated by a strong hostility. As for the deed, you use the harshest words that really wound them. And as for the final step, you feel proud and have an inflated opinion of yourself. These three parts, motivation, deed, and final step, could not have been done better. Suppose you kill a louse, an insect. Your motive is strong hostility. You roll the louse between your fingers and so on, torturing it long. Then eventually you kill it. For the final step, you think that was helpful and become very smug. So the non-virtue has become extremely powerful. We might feel that our virtue is strong, but in fact it is extremely weak. The preparation, motive, and main part of the deed, the final step, deciding, dedicating the virtue, etc., all have been done purely if the virtue is to be very strong. Have to be done purely if the virtue is to be very strong. Contrast this with the virtues we perform. First, there is our motive. I think it's rare for us to be motivated even in the last... I think it's rare for us to be motivated by even the least of motives, a yearning for a better rebirth, let alone the best of motives, which is bodhicitta, or the next best, renunciation. And he describes bodhicitta here as the mind which aspires to enlightenment. So he says, I think it's rare for us to be motivated by even the least of motives, which is a yearning for a better rebirth. It's rare for human beings to be motivated by even the least of motives. So we better be very conscious of how much of a dangerous predicament that we're in here on this planet of sin. If most people can't even cultivate the lowest of motives, which is for a higher rebirth, let alone the highest of motives, which is the mind that aspires to enlightenment, bodhicitta, or the next best, renunciation. Right at the beginning, we usually aspire to achieve desires related to this life's trivia. Any prayers we make to this end are in fact sinful. People making prayers for a better car, for, a house, people who are praying to God for money, like so many are. The majority of Christians in this country, they don't pray, oh Jesus, please accept me into your kingdom. They say, oh Jesus, please give me this, give me that. This is in fact sinful. Then, for the main part of the deed, there is no joy, pure joy or enthusiasm to it. When we recite even one rosary of Om Mani Padme Hum, for example, our minds cannot stay focused the whole time. Everything is either sleep or distraction. It is difficult to do things well for even the time it takes to recite the hundreds of gods of Tushita once. And when it comes to making the final prayers and dedications, we slip back into directing them towards this life. So although we might feel we have performed great virtues, in fact they are only feeble. And that's another thing. You must be brutally honest with yourself. If you're not brutally honest with yourself, you are brutally deluding yourself. Sometimes we do not prepare properly. At other times we botch the motive or the final step. And there are times when we don't do any of them properly. Thus only the non-virtuous karma in our mental streams is very strong. It is the only possible thing that will be activated when we die. So, you feel the weight of this karma. It's very heavy because most of our minds are filled with these negative mental streams based on our actions, which came from a bad motivation, a bad deed, and a bad final step. And if this is what indeed happens, that the non-virtuous karma in our mental stream will be activated when we die. If this happens, the place we will go could only be the lower realms. That is why it is definite we should be reborn in the lower realms. So, that's why it's definite that most of us will be reborn in the lower realms, because our mind streams are more negative than the positive. And that doesn't mean fluffy kind of positive hippie shit. That means genuinely pure. Now, we can say that our lamas possess clairvoyance, and we ask them for dice divinations or prophecies on where we shall get rebirth. We feel relieved if they say, you will get a good rebirth, and are afraid if the answer is, it will be bad. But how can we have any confidence in such predictions? We don't need dice divinations or prophecies or horoscopes to tell us where we're going in our next lives. Our compassionate teacher has already given us predictions in the Sutra Basket, Sutra Pitaka, and we have also received them from many pundits of both India and Tibet. For example, Arya Nagarjuna says in his Precious Garland, from non-virtue comes all suffering, and likewise all the lower realms. From virtue comes the upper realms and all happy rebirths. The sages do not wash away sin with water. They do not rid beings of sufferings with their hands. They do not transfer realizations of suchness onto others. They liberate by teaching the truth of suchness. Teaching the truth of tatata, the truth of the way reality is, as it is in the realm of the Absolute, the realm of the Tathagata. You must see the Tathagata within yourself only, the suchness of that which has gone beyond into the realm of reality as it is. Only then can we aspire for actual liberation. See things as they actually are.